Hi there, welcome back to the Explaining History YouTube channel. Now, if you're watching this, you've probably seen the other couple of things I've done on the Vietnam War today and its origins. And in this video, I'm going to be looking at how the French bid to recolonize Vietnam up to 1954 ends in disaster, and why it is that the USA is drawn in. So, a couple of things you have to bear in mind is that France, after the Second World War, along with Great Britain, one of two former world powers with a vast global empire that was now being overshadowed by the real politics of the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union were the new superpowers, and France and Britain had a long and difficult journey adjusting to this reality. The French needed aid from the Americans in order to begin to recolonize Vietnam and to destroy the Viet Minh. And the reason why America was willing to do this, even though, as I've said in previous videos, both Roosevelt and Truman had misgivings about France and about de Gaulle, was that France was seen as a better option than the other likely outcome that Vietnam would go communist. In reality, it's questionable how communist and independent Vietnam in the 1940s or 50s would have been. Later on, certainly it would have been and did become. But during the 1940s and 50s, the chances are you would have wound up with a left-leaning nationalist republic, but one certainly that wasn't willing to take its lead from the United States. Even though Ho Chi Minh in 1945 modelled the Declaration of Independence of the Republic of Vietnam on the US Declaration of Independence, and also rather hoped that America would become its patron, this republic big brother that it could trade with and be protected by. So there was the possibility, ironically, in 1945, that the Republic of Vietnam could have been firmly within the American sphere of influence, but that was not to be. So France leads a violent and bloody anti-insurgency campaign all the way up to 1954, when deciding to build a forward base in the valley at Dien Bien Phu. The Viet Minh, armed with Chinese and Soviet artillery and rockets, put batteries on the mountaintops surrounding Dien Bien Phu and rained fire down and for several weeks until the surrender of the garrison after a pitched battle, which resulted in the embarrassment for the French of having 11,000 troops taken prisoner. It was such a humiliation, and the French public back at home didn't really care enough about France's colonial ambitions to want to persist with the war in Vietnam. So Dien Bien Phu really spells the end for France. But France was unlikely to succeed anyway, because the offer to the population was so poor. The Buddhist peasants wanted land redistribution, and that was the one thing the French and their Catholic Vietnamese allies, the landowning class in Vietnam, were unwilling to give. And later on, when in 1955, when President Diem proclaims the Republic of Vietnam after the division of Vietnam, which we'll talk about in a moment, his role is to protect the Catholic landowning class. So there's not very much in it for the peasants under the French. And in order to win, that's who you need. You need the peasants on side. You need the peasants who are the majority of the population to want you to win, and they don't. The outcome of Dien Bien Phu is the Geneva Conference, the Geneva Accords. These peace talks happen in Geneva, obviously, and Vietnam is divided in two at the 70th parallel. And the hope is that Vietnam will be reunited in 1956. The talks happened in 54. In 1956, it's hoped that Vietnam will be reunited by an election. America boycotts the talks eventually when it becomes abundantly clear that when there is an election, Ho Chi Minh will win it. And all the effort gone into propping up an anti-communist Vietnam will be wasted. And because America chooses to boycott the talks, it means that there's no chance of there being a peaceful resolution to Vietnam via an election, which may well have succeeded. And they decide that they will then support Diem, who in 1955 becomes the first president of the Republic of Vietnam, or South Vietnam, and goes on to be hideously unpopular. Now, if you go to explaininghistory.podhoster.com, you can now get the next bit of the story, which is today's podcast on President Kennedy and the CIA and the assassination of President Diem. Oh yeah, and subscribe and do some likes and all that business. Thanks very much. All the best. Bye-bye.